Tansei, welcome to Soul Medicine, Ancient Psychologies for Wellness. I am your host, Dr. Karlee Fellner, psychologist and member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. As always, feel free to pick up what fits for you and to leave what doesn't. I'm just here to present a different way of understanding mental health and wellness. This podcast is not intended to provide or take the place of professional advice. If you or someone you know is in need of mental health supports, please reach out to one of the many resources available in your area or to a trusted professional. All details and potentially identifying information about mental work people who I've worked with have been changed to maintain their anonymity and privacy. Today, we are joined by the beautiful Lisa Laurendell, also known as Boss Lady Sitting Woman and Mountain Bluebird Woman. Lisa is Métis Cree and French and a proud member of the Otipemswak Métis government. Her father's family, the Blyans and Lewises, come from Buffalo Lake Métis settlement, and her mother's family, the Laurendells, which means the swallow, have roots in the Lac Lenon and St. Albert areas, as well as Papa's Chase First Nation. Her grandmother's family, the Boudreaux, O'Kanes, and Atkinsons, settled along a road allowance on the Vermilion River in Vermilion, Alberta. Lisa was born in Treaty 6 territory and now makes her home in Treaty 7. She's a wife, a mother, and a cookum. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology with a minor in Native Studies from the University of Alberta and a Bachelor and Master of Social Work from the University of Calgary. Over the years, Lisa has worked across many areas of social work, from disability services and education to rural community health and Indigenous wellness within Alberta Health Services. Lisa now serves as the Indigenous therapist with the Student Wellness Services at the University of Calgary. She is also on the advisory council with Maskihkiy Wellness. Lisa walks as a Nehio Oniso Kamakeo, a Cree helper in wellness, grounding her work in connection, relationship, and the wisdom and medicines that live within us as Indigenous people. Her practice is guided by Indigenous focusing-oriented therapy, an approach that is client-centered, body-centered, land-based, and strengths-based. In addition to all of her direct service work, Lisa is also an artist, a beater, crafter, sewer, and instructor who finds joy in her family, the land, good food, and the rhythm of beating. I'm super excited to have Lisa Laurendell with us today. She's one of our advisors with Maskihkiy Wellness. We've worked together in many capacities over the years. Lisa, I'll just invite you to introduce yourself before we get started.
Thank you, Karlee. Okimau Piosquaya, Nitsikasan, Lisa Laurendell, Nitsikasan, Buffalo Lake Métis Settlement, Egwa Papaches First Nation Onsinia, Makamquash Mokensis Nimikan. So my spirit name is Boss Lady Sitting Woman. It does mean I'm bossy, but in a good way. I get people going. It's kind of what my name means. So I get people going in community. My given name is Lisa Laurendell. So Laurendell is French and Métis Cree. Laurendell means swallow, barn swallow in French. And my family's from Treaty 6, Buffalo Lake Métis Settlement, as well as the non-franchised Papaches First Nation within the city of Edmonton. I live down by Calgary.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. Lisa and I have known each other for almost 5 years now through Indigenous Birth Alberta. From there, ended up working together in counseling and in community and through Indigenous focusing oriented therapy as well. You and I have had many conversations over the last few years, especially about land-based therapeutic work, working with trauma, working on the front lines of genocide, all of that. And just hearing your story coming into this world of counseling out of another world where you were working on the front lines as a social worker and doing many other roles has been really cool. So if you want to share a bit about how it's been for you coming into the world of Indigenous psychotherapies and trauma work.
It's been amazing. And not only for me, I think it's been a privilege to be able to sit with people and be a helper and for them to be able to connect with their own medicines, their own wisdoms in the land, right? And that's what is so fulfilling because that's not out there. It isn't. And I worked in a lot of systems in community and to finally find something that I can be a part of, that Creator has given me some gifts to do, and sit with people, sit with our people, our relatives, and really anybody to access that wellness, because there isn't only one way to wellness. There's not only one road to wellness. So it's been a privilege to do that.
I remember when you were doing a clinical master's in social work program, and we were working together on Nation, and you just kept saying, I don't want to do counseling. I don't want to do counseling. And you were really trying to avoid uh, being a therapist. And now you're like one of the most like 110% therapists I know. Can you talk a bit about that shift? And what was counseling to you before you came into this world of Indigenous psychotherapies?
Well, counseling was something that I didn't really connect to. I didn't really get it when I had lost my grandma. And that was the first time I really went to seek help, right? And that's all that's there. And that's all I thought was there. And as soon as I walked in the room, I'm like, what is this? It just didn't fit with me. It wasn't right. It didn't feel right to me. And it was hard. It was like, well, what do I do now? This is all that's out there. Right. And it took going and talking to other people and really joining my own community here and sitting with people and connecting with elders, connecting with culture, connecting with ceremony. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it still didn't make sense how these two worlds could be so separate. The culture, all the culture and the collective and the community there. And then there's this, which I know has value, this Western way of counseling and therapy, right? And it just didn't, it was always separate to me. There was always a separation there. And when I went and did my practicum with you, working alongside you, it was the land that brought it all together, because, and joining you with IFOT and taking that training into just focusing oriented therapy, the main thing I took out of there was and. There's this, it can be this, and it can be this, and it can be this, and this, right? Which was so amazing. I don't know why there was this separation in my spirit about these things. So I totally had no intentions of being a therapist when I completed my MSW. Nope. Not until I worked with you and we sat on the land and we really connected with people with the land. And it was wonderful. It's amazing to see that. And the therapeutic skills that come into that as well. Yeah, it's awesome.
I remember some years ago now, I was doing my PhD, having a conversation with another PhD student who was down in the States. And we were having these conversations about our work. And they said, like, whoa, I didn't realize that we could bring these two worlds together. Like, there's always been this thinking that when we're in that institution, we check our culture at the door, our community at the door, the land at the door, everything about who we are. And you're just kind of there within mainstream dominating colonial system and you have to conform to their ideals. And it's interesting because it really stuck with me and made me realize how often we are taught to have this split. There will be an episode in the future forthcoming where we address what's labeled as psychosis as an example. But even working with families who are very spiritual, have that understanding of ceremony, and yet when they have someone in their family that's having these gifts of seeing and hearing spirits, it's like that other side kicks in. Melissa Nelson, who's an Indigenous scholar in education, talks about it as the split head society. It's like we have this split head where there's this Euro-Western and then the Indigenous, and they're disconnected. Psychotherapy, psychology, counseling is one of those fields that's been so steeped in Eurocentric ideals for so long. And even thinking about my training, how much it was emphasized to us to be quote unquote objective, to be quote unquote unbiased. And there's this teaching of checking who you are at the door and coming in as this almost blank slate type of person. Um, and that itself is so culturally bound to a Eurocentric culture, right? Just even that illusion of objectivity. Oftentimes we do feel like we can't bring all of who we are into this space: land, community, culture, and then these incredible wisdoms. And it does a huge disservice to the people that we're serving.
And I see that in when I reflect back to the work that I used to do and all the spaces I was in working with Indigenous relatives. And it's like, oh my God, like I could have done so much better in that space had I been able to, had I known and connected back to all of this stuff that can really help people in those moments. I don't shy away anymore from the conflict because as we're taught, there's something wrong with us. There's a something wrong, and there was an unknown about it. And the way we work now is, no, there's nothing wrong with you. There's just some stuff going on, and to be able to sit with people in those really intense situations and be okay as a helper and help them be okay has been absolutely a game changer for me. So when people come to me and say, "Oh, we have this person that's just," and I'm like, "Okay, that's not them, that's you and your reaction to it. Let's see how we can help because there's something going on here that we need to help them with, right?" And so I'm like, let's go talk. Let's go. I'm going to those people. I'm going to those situations now that before I would run from because there was something wrong with that person that I probably couldn't fix. So I have to see a psychiatrist. I have to go up the ladder to see all the people, to get all the meds, to do all the things. And that's just not the case.
There's so much blame and shame towards an individual and this you, and this person's so pathological and there's so many things wrong with them. And yeah, totally coming out of that framework, like you say, is an absolute game changer. And it's a game changer for the person because you're actually seeing the human. The blaming and shaming and individualizing is a dehumanizing process. And there is fear there. And there's also those dynamics of power over or hierarchy or better than, but the therapist is the expert or the psychiatrist the expert or whoever it may be, who is somehow better than the person who's coming for help.
Definitely.
How has learning Indigenous approaches to therapy impacted you personally?
It's been absolutely transformative in how I treat myself, the care I give myself, and to be able to know that I can take care of myself. I can heal myself. I can tap into those things. And as well as how I interact with my family, how I interact with my children, my grandchildren, and knowing that there is something out there that honors the end and in the world that we live in, and that I can help get them access to it. My kids are young adults. They're trying to adult in this world, and it just doesn't align sometimes, right? And we struggle. And I've really been able to tap into their own strengths, them lead the way, and it's really helped our relationship, really. So, as a therapist now, I sit with people and they are the experts on themselves. So I've transitioned that into my family, and it has provided space, so much space. I could cry, so much space for them to be who they are, and knowing they're not, they're not, they don't have to carry our up it, and there's a future, there's something better coming for their children.
Yeah, it's such a game changer. It really helps you lean into things, especially with parenting.
These tools help in the transitions. You have a baby and you're in that baby stage. Next, they're a toddler. They move from toddlerhood to like this young child, right? And then there's like, oh no, and then they're growing up and they're going through the changes, and then they're teenagers. So it's like a constant state of transition. When you think you got it, things change, right? And how do we as parents accept that we have no control over anything when it comes to parenting? We really don't. And it's just about learning how to give them autonomy and sovereignty because that's what we need. And that's what we didn't get, which is why we're so like, I gotta hang on, right? Because we never had that, right? And we're still trying to set down the learned stuff that come from other people, from our parents, our grandparents, and all those things, right? And understanding where they come from. So the more that we can let go and help those transitions in a good way, and just really leading with love, right? It's been eye-opening for me because those transitions were always hard, very difficult for me. Kids, not so well, they were cool. It's been interesting because when they're 18, you got no, choice but to let go. You can try, right? And there's really lots of conflicts with that, but to use these tools, the land, really, you lay your tobacco. I've probably gone through, I don't know how much tobacco since since my kids have moved out and turned 18. But it's that faith that creators got them. I can love them and I have to learn how to be with them differently, but doesn't mean I'm disconnected from them. I'm just supporting them differently now. And that's all my work that I have to do as a parent, right? And that helps me because the transitions don't stop. Young adult, parenthood, their relationships, the grandchildren, and then helping them parent, right? And really providing, like they say that, when I have my grandkids, it's another opportunity. I'm gonna cry. My daughter tells me that her children get the best version of me now, and to be grateful for that, right? Because I still carry a little bit of guilt of not being the perfect parent. So to hear her say that, I've done a lot of work. So my grandkids are gonna get the healthier me, and my daughter's gonna have to do less work because I'm still working on those things. So
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, let's just acknowledge there's no such thing as a perfect parent, right? There really
nope.
isn't. But that's where, like, you've talked about, I'm so grateful for that and to know that, yeah, I'm not going to be perfect. And part of that is my children having the opportunity to know that none of us are perfect. It's okay not to be perfect. And there's ways of addressing those mistakes we made, right?
So one of the ways this really helped with my own family, with my daughter, teenager, teenager anger, really she was carrying a lot of my anger. I figured out later, but we would get stuck. Like she would get upset, and then we would just get stuck in this cycle, and we're just feeding off each other, right? So I'm trying to explain and I'm trying to defend myself, and then she just wasn't hearing it, and then she'd get going and going, and it would take so long for us to get back to the earth really, and get grounded and really have a conversation about it after. And then there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt for me, a lot of guilt for her, and it caused a lot of tension in our relationship, right? And I wasn't really helping her. And she wanted me to help her, but I wasn't helping her. So learning some of the tools in iFought and using them at home, this was the first transition into doing that, because this hurt me, this hurt her. I know we were kind of in pain and suffering with this, and nothing was working. And so the next time that she had this happen, we were actually in a truck, and we had gone out for lunch, and then she got out of the truck and she went off and stood by a building, and I went over there and she was just caught up in the tears and just kind of almost screaming, and I had to bring her back down. I'm like, okay, use the tools. You got to use it, because the one thing that helped me use those tools is to recognize that the longer we stayed this way, the more she suffered. I need to help reduce the suffering, minimal suffering in this, because she was suffering in that. So that really drove me to say, okay, what can we do here? So I talk loudly to her, solid to her. It's like, hi, yeah, we're here. We're here. We just went for lunch. You're here with me. We're outside. Would you like to take your shoes off? And she took her shoes off and she planted her feet on the concrete. I'm like, oh, do you feel that wind on your body? And I said, put your chin up. Can you feel that wind on your face? And she put her chin up and she felt the wind. And she was just doing as I was asking in that moment. And I said, yeah, you're here. Yeah, this is hard, right? Is there a noise that needs to come out there? And she's like, ah. I'm like, yeah, oh. I repeated what she said, and I'm giving it to the land. I told her that. I said, give it to the land. Ah. Right. And then she moved her body and she shook her hands. I'm like, shake it. Yes, yes. Give it to the land there. Yeah. And it took about 3 minutes. And she was back with me in that moment. And I was so happy I'm going to cry again. I was so happy. I'm like, here she is. She's right here. And that was 3 minutes and not hours of her suffering. And she looked at me and I said, hi. Oh, that was a big one. Yeah. Let's go get a drink. And there was really no words in that to explain what was happening, but it didn't need to be. But I knew she was suffering, and it took 3 minutes, and it was absolutely amazing. And then I talked to her about the tools, talked to her about using the wind, using the land, right? And really giving it to the land, because she doesn't need to carry it. So I was like, amazing.
When we lean into these land-based tools, into Indigenous therapies, we take the ego out of the space, right? Because when we get in those situations where we're trying to defend ourselves and the other person's trying to defend themselves. Everybody's trying to protect their ego. It escalates. It just grows it and grows it and grows it.
It's not so funny when you're in the grocery store and somebody's losing it in the middle of the aisle,
Yeah.
but they're on the floor. Guess what? The land is there. Let them use
Yeah.
the land, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Give it to the land.
Give it to the land. Oh, you're upset there.
It's such a good reminder that especially children, their bodies know what to do. Their bodies know how to release everything that they're picking up. Like Shirley talks about, she has that YouTube video, Aboriginal Psychotherapy, on the iFought channel. And she talks about how little kids are just sponges. They sponge up so much because they're so open and they sponge up so much for the collective. So when something's happening in the family, let's say a grief, there's been a loss, somebody passed away, a relative passed away, maybe an uncle, cousin, grandparent, the little ones are going to pick up lots of that, right? The beautiful thing is it is very much in our nature when we're little to go to the land and give it to the land. That's how we come into this world, the same way that the animals do it. Peter Levine talks about when you have a quote unquote prey animal, right? Let's say a deer, outruns a wolf. Once it knows it's safe, it lets its body shake and it shakes all that trauma out into the land. The land takes the trauma. The deer doesn't develop PTSD, because if the deer has PTSD, then that's gonna work against the deer surviving out in the wilderness. And we're just the same, and we've always had those ways going back thousands and thousands of years. And at some point, everybody has it in their lineage. It's just how far back is it? We have folks here who still live indigenously to this day, who are still practicing the ceremonies and giving what they need to release to the land constantly, right? Whereas you have some folks whose ancestors maybe haven't been doing that for 2,000 years or more. So we hold a lot in our bodies when we're not letting ourselves release like that. It's good for us to remember that.
This work is life-saving. It does save lives. It provides an opportunity for people to lay down the collective, to acknowledge the genocide that they're experiencing every day and in the systems that they're in, just in daily life, and there's a space to acknowledge that. It's genocide informed work that we do. And, addressing that elephant in the room. It provides a way to put that down in a good way, that it's still being honored and that it can be transformed. It provides people the opportunity to speak about that in a safe way, speak about the suicide that enters the room, the homicide that enters the room, and to be free to share about the psychosis, the spirits, about all of the things. It's a wonderful safe space to have those conversations, and to be able to do that in this way that it's honored and respected, and it is life-saving because the system doesn't allow space for it. It really doesn't. People don't walk away feeling that there's something wrong with them, right? And they acknowledge the collective. They acknowledge those generations of genocide that is within them. And that is deadly for our people. We've been hanging on to it. We really have, in everything that we're doing. And to be safe, to lay it down, to take a breath, have a space to take a rest, generational rest, and to be able to move forward and find ways that can help with that, because it's their work, it's their children's work, it's their children's work. And I know the clients that I see, young adults, it's been interesting to see them relax with that understanding, because they are trying to do such good work, right? Like they are taking advantage of all the doors that were knocked down, the spaces that were created for them to succeed in the systems and do all the things and make changes in society. But they carry all of that with them too. So to be able to sit with somebody and say, yeah, that's not all yours there, is
Yeah.
it? And they're like, it's not, and you see that weight in them. You're like, but we can put that down so they can continue to move, you know, forward. And these are up and coming ceremonialists, that are getting educated, doing the and, right? Right. So they can let some of that down and be able to continue to move forward. And because that weight it can be deadly if there isn't a space to acknowledge it, there's a space to lay it down, and there isn't a space to not feel like there's something wrong with you because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so much when we carry it all thinking it's ours, right? Like, again, just a life-saving shift there is knowing it's not all yours, right? This is not all yours, and what you're coming in with, what's showing up through your body, those conversations are collective, they're intergenerational, and they're coming forward for wellness, for balance. Those are important conversations that need to be heard. I was working with this person once and, they had a lot of information coming through their body all the time. And this person dealt with a lot of pain as well, and so he came in and we decided to go into a piece of the pain one day, and it ended up being that there were a couple generations of ancestors who had passed away, whose deaths hadn't really been acknowledged or dealt with. It was something that the family just sort of like shut away, shoved into a closet. And they were just coming forward asking for acknowledgement, asking for someone to feed them, to put out an offering to them, to acknowledge them and let them out of the closet. These ones who had passed away, they just wanted the closet door to be opened, acknowledge us, acknowledge that we passed, and that's all we need. They were coming through this guy's body. So when he did that, it actually released that pain from his body. He had an experience of chronic pain that he had dealt with for years, leaving his body. All the while, this chronic pain were these ancestors coming through. Just an absolute shift to realize even that pain's not yours. There's just skeletons that want out of the closet here. You there's some relatives who are asking for acknowledgement, who are asking for something to help them. And as we know, our Indigenous people and communities here in Turtle Island, there's been so much trauma and grief that hasn't been able to be processed through generations of surviving genocide and not being allowed to practice ceremony and the culture and all of that. And so we are seeing so many people today doing that healing and that work for the generations. And it's huge for people to have that realization. It's not you. There's not something wrong with you. You don't have 8 concurrent diagnoses out of the DSM, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, there's just conversations coming through. Let's listen to the conversations, engage the wisdom. It just happens and we move forward. And it is fundamentally life-saving, like you're saying.
And the work that we do at the Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice, when that council was made, and people are realizing I'm a survivor of forced and coerced sterilization. It was something that either they didn't know and it's coming forth, or they've repressed, thinking that maybe I'm mistaken, or maybe it just didn't want to address it. And then now it's a national thing, and the conversation is happening, and there's a movement towards justice. But all of this stuff comes back up, right? So the work that we do in supporting survivors, letting them know that there is a space to have this conversation, there's a place to lay down this grief and to process and go through whatever's coming forth, because some people discover the generational survivors. So you got generations of family who have been forcibly sterilized or coerced into sterilization. And a lot of people are overwhelmed with that knowledge and in their bodies, and take it on, right? Causing illness, causing thoughts of suicide, causing destruction within themselves, not
Mhm.
knowing where to put it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's one of the profound pieces of these movements, like the Survivors Circle, like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is that collective connectedness and realizing, yeah, it's not just you, it's thousands and thousands of people or more, right? That have experienced these things and that you don't need to carry all of that. You're not alone. And like, this is real. These things that we are surviving and have been through are real. What an important moment for justice. There are changes happening, like the criminalization of forced and coerced sterilization. That's so important for people to know, healthcare providers to know it's not okay to do that to people. What a critical movement to justice.
And I know we were talking about parenting earlier. So like, this is the one of the worst acts of genocide is to rip that ability to become a parent from somebody so forcibly, right? We're probably carrying it as we struggle to parent, right? There's a piece of that that's been, you know, ripped away, and we're carrying it for our ancestors. The collective, like as you spoke to, we feel that with reclaiming that right to parenthood. The Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice just announced the art launch, the assisted reproductive technology to regain or to reclaim the ability to birth your own children, right? Of those who have been forcibly coerced into sterilization. So it's like a full circle of, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to take it back and take control of our bodies in that way too. Take that power back. So to be able to access that healing fund that they're going to have and the support to be able to do that for some people is absolutely amazing. And it kind of speaks to this resurgent as well of the birthright, giving birth on the land, using the land, right? Which is, and I know a story that you can share too, because that the land holds us, and all of those sacred ceremonies, the sacred processes of our bodies.
What that brings up for me, is that reminder and that reclaiming of the two most sacred ceremonies of this physical earth, birth and death, coming in from the spirit world and returning to the spirit world, and how much those sacred processes have been desecrated through acts of genocide and colonialism, losing that honoring. In addition to forced and coerced sterilization, there's so much obstetric violence that happens in institutionalized spaces. The research is out there, unnecessary interventions that create other interventions, returning to that sacredness of what it means to bring a spirit earth side, and how for hundreds of thousands of years birth was always held in community by the women. And the shift into colonial approaches to birthing is actually very recent, even within Euro-settler history. Returning to the land, like you're saying, returning to honoring those ceremonies. And it even connects back with the death and the person I talked about who had those ancestors just needing to be acknowledged on their transition out. It's the coming in and the coming out. Those are such sacred times, and really creating more spaces to honor that. And the land is a critical part of that. And then everything that happens in between in our lifetimes. Healthy communities begin at birth. Like how much attachment stuff that we deal with, all the push and pull that happens in people's relational attachments, how much of that actually goes back to how was your birth? What
Mhm.
happened there? Because if your body, as soon as it's coming into this world, learns that, wow, you've been taken from the person that has grown you and birthed you and is giving you life, that's a fundamental terror for that little body to be taken away right away, even if it's just for a few minutes.
The stories that remains within our bodies as we grow, right? So that's the stories that we're seeing in sessions. All of these stories come through, and all of these stories exist in some land somewhere. Or they could be given to the land, and the land will take care of it. They're not serving us. And some of these stories just need to be told in that. But we need to reconnect. We need to connect with our bodies. We need to connect with the land. We need to find a way to move that energy. We got to transform it or transfer it, and tap into the wellness that'll keep us going, moving forward in the pursuit of justice, the action piece of all of that. So, in pursuit of justice, in pursuit of protecting our families and creating healthy families and whole families, and being in relation with our children and our grandchildren, our grandparents, and everybody in community.
Exactly. Yeah, those stories are simply guiding us to wellness, guiding us to justice, guiding us to action that will bring us back into balance with one another and with all of the cosmos. It's so important. Beautiful wisdom that comes through these conversations our bodies are having with us that when it gets pathologized, when it gets diagnosed and shut down or silenced, we don't have access to that. We don't get to the medicine when that's happening.
And if those spaces aren't there, we might not live to see them.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next full moon.